Hey guys, what's going on? This is Ed from VinylAlbumCovers.com, and welcome back at long last to Slept On. You know what we do here. We talk about songs by artists that should have been hits. Um, Today we're going to talk about an interesting artist, and one that I think was mischaracterized. We're going to talk a little bit about Dino. Dino, his real name is Dean Esposito, and he's based out of Vegas. I believe he's still there even to this day, working as a producer. He's continued to work producing for sax player Paul Taylor and a bunch of others too. So he's still busy. He's like 60 years old. It's hard to believe. But we're gonna go back a bit to 1989, 1990, somewhere in there. Dino was a fairly successful artist by this point. He'd had a hit off of his very first record, 24/7. And I'm going to look real quick and see when 24/7 came out. I think I know. But let me be absolutely certain, because we got to be right here. Yeah, the 24/2 record, 24/7 record, excuse me, came out in 1989, I believe. Yeah, 1989. That's exactly when it came out. And it had a couple of hits on it. I Like It was the biggest one. And he was kind of positioned as a pop act. And I remember the first time I heard him, I couldn't tell whether he was black or white. I didn't know. In fact, I think I remember assuming that he was just black, because I didn't have access to videos or anything like that at that point. It was a long time ago. So I had no access to videos, and I couldn't see what color he was or anything like that. So I assumed that he was black, and he was doing this was just kind of like an R&B dance thing. But apparently, he was actually positioned more as a pop freestyle act, and I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe you can hear the freestyle in him, but I couldn't. And granted, I didn't get huge into that first record. In fact, I didn't even buy it, but I did hear I Like It, and I thought that was cool. And there's a couple of other things I've heard off of it. Summer Girls, which I guess kind of might be. And then I remember hearing Nighttime Love Kind too, much, much later. Interesting title. But we're going to focus on an album that I did hear plenty of. We're going to focus on the Swingin' album. You know, the one right over there? Yeah, that one. This album is great. It really is. But at any rate, with this record, there was a lot of good stuff on this album. Like, there was a lot of stuff you just... It's almost an album where you don't skip anything. Like, it's got great stuff on it. Like, Romeo's great. Can't Get Away From You. Falling For You. And certainly the next song that we're going to talk about, Why Do You Do Me, is cool. There's a lot of good stuff on this record, and it's kind of a shame, kind of the way things went for it. Now, Romeo did very, very well. Let me look here real quick, just so I can verify how well Romeo did. Let me see here, because gosh darn it, these things are important. But Romeo managed to get, I think it did very well in the pop charts. It got to number 6, and it even crossed over a little bit to the R&B charts. It got to number 69, which isn't amazing. But I don't know why it didn't cross over. Actually, no, I do know. It's like I'm trying to rush myself, and I don't want to rush myself. So, but at any rate, but, Romeo did respectably, and so, of course, they were looking for another single, and here's where things get interesting. And this is kind of... This will lead us nicely into the second part of this video here. So, Gentle was a song that was written by Cornelius Mims, and released as a single by an artist named Frederick. His real name is Frederick Davis, back in 1984. And it was... It worked. Janice Dowland was the female singer that was on that song, and it got noticed a bit. It didn't set the world on fire, but it did fairly well in the R&B charts. Of course, pop ignored it. It wasn't a pop record at all, but it was very much kind of kind of an R&B thing of the moment, you know, and it worked well. In fact, you can take a look at the album right here. The album came out in '84. It's not a bad record, really. I've got a copy of it myself. That is my copy. And you can find the rest of it on the website, like the back cover and the labels and things of that sort. All that stuff's on the website if you're curious. But it's not a bad album, and he's a good singer. He really is a very good singer. But unfortunately, after that, Frederick didn't get a whole lot further. He's actually still working today. He took a little bit of time away from the business, but he's back now and he's making music again. He still sounds really good. So if you're curious, his website is... I was just looking at his website. Let me go back to it real quick. He refers to himself as Frederick the Entertainer now, which I think is kind of funny. And his website is frederickdavis.com. And you'll kind of see what he looks like now. Very well preserved for his age, for sure. Not a bad looking guy at his age. And there's new music, and he's back. So check it out. But at any rate, at some point, Dino, being an experienced DJ, heard that song somewhere along the line and picked it for a cover. And so he decided to do it. And if I can look back here, I will even tell you who he did it with. For some reason, my Delona Tanner. There we go. I got it. It came right back into my brain. But Delona was an artist that Dino was working with. She was signed to his production company, and I think they were going to try to make a record on her, and they never did. But Delona Tanner's right there, by the way, if you're curious what she looks like. And that's a fairly recent photo. But she's all over the video, for sure. But we're actually not going to listen to, excuse me, we're not going to listen to the video version here today because it's a little short. Radio does what radio does. And the album version is really the only way to fly with the song. So I'll tell you what, we're going to go ahead now and listen to that album version now. This is the album version of Gentle by Dino, and then we're going to talk a little bit about that other thing that I've kind of been staying away from here. Or the other aspects of why things kind of went wrong, and we'll talk a bit more about kind of how his career progressed from there and so on and so forth. So without any further ado, as I typed furiously in order to catch up, here is the album version of Gentle by Dino.
days I'm so confused. Since you have stopped running, I'll take my time, I'll wait for you, 'cause I know you'll be coming. I'll be gentle, baby, I'm gonna be gentle when I'm loving you. When I'm loving you, when I'm loving you, wanting to please you. When you're lying next to me, baby girl, you've got me calling out your name. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'll be gentle, please be very gentle. When I'm loving you, baby, baby, baby. When I'm loving you, yeah. I don't ever wanna stop loving you, girl. So don't you ever stop being in my world. I don't ever wanna quit loving you, boy. So don't you ever stop giving me joy. I don't ever wanna stop loving you, girl. So don't you ever stop being in my world. I don't ever wanna stop loving you, girl. So don't you ever stop being in my world.
So there it is. That was Gentle by Dino with Delona Tanner doing the female vocal. So let's talk a bit about this. And now that you've heard it, and then we're going to talk about kind of what I think went wrong here, why it wasn't successful, why Dino wasn't able to keep going, etc., etc., etc. So, but let's talk about the musicians that play on this thing. I mean, first of all, and I left this out intentionally, but first of all, you've got Jeff Lorber as the associate producer and keyboard player, or one of the keyboard players. Dino plays a lot of keyboard too, and he's good. Dino's a good player, a really good player. Jeff Lorber is a legend. So to get Jeff Lorber, and apparently he got Jeff Lorber through, basically just through a friend, and he got Jeff involved, and Jeff started contributing, and you could definitely tell. I mean, the album is musically better for it. Dino is no slouch, thank you very much, but Jeff definitely added some things to the proceedings. If you listen to like the keyboard solo in the title track, that's Jeff, and it sounds amazing. Just, yeah, Jeff Lorber, get loose indeed. Paul Jackson is the guitar player. Paul Jackson Jr., of course, who's been on absolutely everything. He's done every record that's ever, okay, not every record, but he's done a lot of records. Just an incredible session player. Played with the American Idol band for a long time. He may still be doing that, I'm not really sure, but just an amazing, amazing guitar player who has solo albums himself. Paul Taylor, we talked about him, who's playing soprano sax over the whole thing, and sounds just incredible. Dino just kind of let him go, and he sounds really nice. He adds some very, very nice ear candy to that track. Delona Tanner herself sounds very nice. She's doubled throughout, just to kind of make her sound more like Dino, because Dino is too. Just for, because that was the sound, But she sounds really good on it. So does he. He has a nice sounding voice, but again, we'll get more into that in a minute. Jahi did backgrounds on it. You can definitely tell that he's back there. He's all over the record, Jahi is. He worked on 24/7 as well, and that's the last I see of Jahi. Although I think, if I'm not no, he didn't. I was about to say he worked on the Michael Frank's, oh gosh, on Blue Pacific, but he didn't. That was a different singer, different background singer. Speak to Me was the track. It's a Jeff Lorber thing. Anyway, I'm getting distracted because it has nothing to do with nothing with Jahi. But you've also got Stephanie Spruill, who's sung backup for everybody. She's very present on the track as well. Just an amazing sounding track. Alan Meyerson is the mixer, and it sounds great. Just a great sounding track in general. So, okay. So let's talk about what went wrong. And by the way, I should also apologize for the audio. I forgot to hit record on my recorder. So the beginning of it will still sound okay, but it won't sound as good as it does now. So please forgive me. I didn't want to leave that out. So 1,000 lashes with a wet microphone cable and such. But okay, so what goes wrong here? Well, I think a lot of this comes down to the way that the record label saw him, and also to a certain degree the way he saw himself. Dino is not one for interviews. There are very few. I ran into an Arsenio Hall performance where he's interviewed, a little bit, a Friday Night Videos performance where he's interviewed. But then there's also this other interview, and I'll put a link to it in the description because it goes on for a bit. It's a modern day interview, and it's a good one. The interviewer steps on him quite a bit, but there's still a lot of useful information in there, especially with regards to the way that he saw himself. See, Dino saw himself as a pop act, and I don't really know why, because that's not really what he was. I mean, okay, yeah, there are definite pop elements to the music that he made, but he's not really that. He certainly doesn't sing like a pop singer. He was more, for me anyway, and you can, if you think I'm crazy, tell me in the comments, I can take it. But to me, he kind of came off more like an R&B singer and an R&B artist. And I think, and he was signed to Fourth and Broadway, which is kind of an R&B label. It's an offshoot of Island Records. So I think that was a major mistake, especially when he's coming out with things like Gentle. I mean, no pop music fan will have heard that Frederick song, ever. I'd heard it, but I'm not a pop music fan. I'm an R&B fan. But I would venture a guess that probably by then, even a lot, excuse me, it's reflex, even a lot of R&B fans might not have heard that song, but Dino had heard it. And so this is a display of tremendous taste on Dino's part, because that track, like the vocal, Frederick's vocal is excellent. It's really good, but it did need better production, and this version is better production. I mean, Dino and Jeff, and like, this is just better production. They did a better job on it. Dino's a better producer, and that's what you get out of this. But Dino was more an R&B act than maybe even he realized. Certainly more than his record label did, because they aimed him pop. And they marketed him pop. I mean, you can see, look at this photo here, for instance. I mean, he doesn't look like he sounds. And it's certainly not with this picture, with the braids on one side. I don't know whose idea that was, but it was probably his. And then to make things worse, with all due respect to New Kids on the Block, he went on tour with them. And I mean, there is something to be said for exposure, and there was certainly a lot of it. In fact, I remember going to the show the year that he was the opening act. I went to that show because I just had to see the spectacle. There hadn't been anything like that in years, and I'm not sure there's been anything like that since. But just seeing that at the Cap Center, which doesn't exist anymore, that tells you how long ago this was. This was 1990, I believe. But it's the loudest show I've ever been to. And I don't go to all that many shows, but it's the loudest by far. It was ear-splitting to be there that night. And I went to an MC Hammer show, which is the loudest thing I thought I'd ever see. But this was louder by quite a bit. And the interesting thing is that the girls were screaming. There were so many girls, of course, because New Kids on the Block. And they were all screaming their heads off the entire time. I remember there was this girl behind me that had this little baby with her. It's like, you couldn't find a babysitter? Like, anyway, because he shouldn't have been there. but it's the loudest thing I've ever been to. And I was interested in seeing Dino because I was a fan musically of him, but I couldn't hear a thing. I might as well not even have been there. I couldn't hear a thing, couldn't hear anything at all. And certainly, and I did stay for the New Kids, and I couldn't hear that at all. I don't think I stayed for the whole thing, as I recall. I seem to recall leaving at what might have been about halfway through, because I couldn't hear anything. I'm a music fan. I'm not a screaming girl fan. That's just not me. So I got about halfway through, realized I wasn't going to hear anything, and now I remember leaving. I did take off. I was with a friend, and we were just like, yeah, that's okay. And we took off, because there's some good music in New Kids canon. There really is. At least I think so. So I was happy to be there, even to just listen to the music, to try to take that in. But there was no way you could do it. But Dino was part of that tour, and so, long story short, Dino became packaged as a pop act, and really he kind of was at the beginning too. Although he certainly didn't have to be. And I think that's where this whole thing falls apart, because that's not really who Dino is or was. Dino was an R&B act. I mean, if you listen to the songs on Swingin', it's an R&B album. I fully believe that it's an R&B album. I don't think it's a pop album. I really don't. I mean, the chord changes in Falling For You, for instance, are very R&B. You could make a case that Can't Get Away From You is kind of is somewhat of a pop thing, but even then it hits too hard for pop music. I mean, Romeo's got Dr. Ice on it. Like, I really believe it's an R&B track. Gentle definitely is. Why Do You Do Me is an R&B thing. It's an R&B record, but because of the way that he presented himself and because of the way that the album was marketed, it was never going to be taken seriously as such. I mean, even Romeo peaked at number 69 on the R&B charts, and Gentle didn't chart at all, and it should have. I guess ultimately what I'm saying is, for those of us who were around back then, it's not really your fault, It was the way he was marketed, and based on the interview that I saw not too long ago, the link of which I will put in the description because Dino interviews are very rare. That's the way he saw himself. And I think it was a huge mistake for him to see himself as a pop act when that's not really what he was. So anyway, a couple of years later, after Swingin', he left 4th and Broadway and got signed to East West, the fine folks over at basically Elektra. And he got signed over there and released The Way I Am, which is, again, it's another R&B record, and he led with Ooh Child, a cover of the Five-Stair-Step song. And he does a nice job with it. His voice is not enough for that song. It kind of needs more. It needs a stronger, especially at the end, the Right Now reprise. It kind of needs more from him vocally than he can deliver. But the song is good. It's a good production. It feels good. It's got hip-hop elements in it, which of course you had to have in 1992. But it's like, why is nobody seeing that this is an R&B act? And I really believe, and I know I've said this a few times already, but I really think that's where the whole thing goes sideways. He was an R&B act, and that's not how he perceived himself. Neither is it how the record labels that he was signed to perceived him either. And I think that was the mistake. I really do. And of course, 1992, there was the grunge thing happening, and music had just become very different. And because he was positioned as a pop act and not as an R&B act, he had a very well-defined shelf life, and he couldn't get past it. I think if he would have seen himself as an R&B act, he could have continued, because R&B in 1992 was kind of banging, and it would have been nice to have seen him lumped in, kind of packaged that way, rather than as a pop act. So, okay, rant over. I know I kind of went on about that, but this is really kind of a case study in what happens when artist and record label don't see the artist in the way that don't see the artist for who they really are. And I think that was that's kind of what created Dino's downfall. Now, thankfully, Dino's such an excellent producer that he's continued to work. It didn't sink him. He simply went behind the board, as they say, and started producing for Paul Taylor. He had been anyway, but he just kind of kept doing it. So all of Paul Taylor's albums, as far as I know, have some involvement at least from Dino. He started Onid Productions with the Swingin' album and just kind of stayed on that header, which is good. So he still has a career in music, and he's still flourishing just as a producer and as a player, not as an artist. So that's good. So anyway, we'll go ahead and stop this one here. Thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry I took so long. I will not be away so long again. There'll be a new video every week, I promise. I'm back on the bus now, so stay tuned for lots more content. More album covers will be coming too. I'll keep the website going and stuff. I'm basically back now, like all the way back. So so sorry I was gone so long. It really couldn't be avoided, but now I'm back to doing the thing that I love now. So you'll get a lot more from me. I'm excited to show you what else we've got, what else I've got planned here, because there's a lot of stuff coming. There was an idea that I had a long time ago that is now back in full swing. So we're gonna do this, y'all. So stay tuned for the ride. This should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to not only giving you more content, but getting you involved in the channel itself. So thanks to those of you who have newly subscribed. I see you, and I thank you. For those of you who are watching, thank you so much for sticking with me through this. I appreciate it. This has not been easy, but we back. So anyway, again, thank you very much for your time, for watching this video. And there's definitely more coming, for sure, I promise. So until we see each other in the next video, keep listening to great music.